All right, welcome to this episode of the memory team meeting. Jump past the not verbalized topics. Unless there are any objections, I was gonna run through the board real quick. If I can pick the right screen to share. All right, so for this milestone, I actually grouped them this time. So hopefully the subject matter, we go through each one first. So you're up, Nicola, with cache SQL calls. The first one, load balancing. I saw that you pinged, or you labeled for a group database, and I'm sure nobody got notified, so I pinged the database team on that one. Are you waiting for feedback from them?
I think I already got feedback from Camille and another maintainer as well. This is a small change, so I think that we can fit it. It only, like, I think that I will address it and send it to the maintainer review this week, so I can be free the next one. And related to the documentation is almost done. I will send it today for review, so I guess that I can just fix the reviewer comments during this week, and this will be also done this week, so we can focus on 2 gigabytes next week.
Awesome. Thank you. Mathias, you're up.
Yeah, so this is the parent issue basically for all that's related to caching around rescaling images. We basically broke out one, yeah, exactly, thank you. Exactly this. So this is the one issue we broke out of it, which will just replace that, because I think it will be sufficient to just do this, which is to support conditional gaps in Workhorse. So there's an MR, and it's actually already reviewed even by a maintainer in Workhorse. But we said, because I really struggle to add test automation in this MR, because yeah, like the initial test suite that we added, we weren't quite sure yet, what we were doing back then, because that was the first feature we worked on. So I'm reworking the whole test suite in another MR that is also in MR, but I'm waiting feedback for this still. Then we want to merge this, and then we're going to rebase all that work on top of that, because I think it will be easier that way around. And we didn't want to merge something that isn't well covered by tests. Yeah, so, but it's like almost done.
Okay. And Alexi, you got a couple.
Yeah, I'm working on this. It's quite in the middle because I'm currently still hitting the issue with implementation. So thanks, Camille, for your suggestion. I'm trying it, but yeah, I will try to work on it today and see what I could do. The next one, sorry?
Does it work?
Not entirely. It seems like the code requires a full file to be present. So end of file, I'm currently meet end of file exception. So I'm trying to figure out, maybe it's my problem.
Okay,
so yeah.
Maybe it's like the size of the buffer. Anyway, I think it should work in general. Like,
okay, I will see. So the next one is immersed today. So I just didn't close the issue because I just wanted it to land production first and check it. So, but it's ready.
Thank you. And then Mathias, you created this one this week, create image scaling documentation.
Yeah, because I kind of realized that we started adding these bits and pieces, across several code bases, and we have a runbook that I need to remind myself there's no issue for this yet, that we will need to update again. Yeah, I don't actually have a super specific suggestion like how or where we will document this, but I think we could benefit from some documentation in just a developer or contributor docs there, especially now with caching, it will get even more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know what everyone else thinks about it. Because I wasn't quite sure, should we look at this as a feature that also that developers might frequently interact with, or should we just treat it really as an implementation detail to Workhorse mostly, in which case maybe it's not worth documenting? Yeah, I don't know. I think when I created it was during the time where we had all these MRs popping up around, oh, we need to like set this piece of config in omnibus and that piece of config in Helm charts, and then we need to go back and like here change this header and Rails, and there's then stuff in Workhorse as well. It feels like, yeah, or maybe that's just part of the handover for whoever we will hand this over to really be thorough there. But it seems like someone who is not intimately familiar with how it was built might have a hard time like piecing this all together.
Agreed. I think this is worth following up on, because do we have like the issue that Alexei was just talking about, the ops flag? Is that documented anywhere?
No.
Okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because honestly, maybe we can just start by having a bunch of links that just guide people in the right directions for where to look for the crucial pieces, right? We don't have to write a novel here. It's just just a little bit of guidance. Yep.
Yeah, that should be the goal. It's just as little as possible, as you put it. It doesn't have to be a novel or deep explanation. Just if you're looking into image scaling, check out these links. So cool. All right.
So maybe like it makes sense like to have that as part of the administration part, because I think like one config that there is also like amount of the concurrent procs that you can have, and this is definitely something configurable, and we have a template for like the docs and the feature flags. So I guess like administration connected with amount of the concurrent kind of defines the behavior of image scaling, and this is probably a place where you could also add info about the feature flags, what are there and how they are configured.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had forgotten about this almost, because when we set out to build this, it was meant as like an implementation detail, but then kind of 80% of the project, we decided, oh, some of this config, maybe we actually want to expose that to admins so they can fine tune their deployment. So now it is actually at least admin facing in a way, because there is a piece of Workhorse config that where you can tune this thing. So yeah, that should definitely be documented. Yeah.
Is setting 0 means disabling image scaling completely, or is it?
Funny enough, no, it is, but it is in practice. I don't think we ever actually thought about it, but it actually behaves in exactly that way. Like if you set it to 0, it will be sorry, do you mean disable or enable? So because if you set it to 0, it is unbounded basically. So you will run as
no. It should fall back to defaults, no? If it's 0 or less, as far as I remember. At least,
okay,
at least in my code, which I was implemented 2 weeks ago, I checked if it's 0 or less.
Okay, fair enough.
Right. Just use, but maybe it's not correct in terms of what Camille noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely sure that we did not really think about what will happen if we set this to 0, because it was not expected to be set to 0. But yeah, I think now that you mentioned it, you're right. 0 meaning we will just always, it will just not run. It's basically like a feature toggle inside of Workhorse, but it was not designed that way. It's just kind of...
No. I mean, 0, it should set like default values, as far as I remember.
Okay, guys, I believe you need to
whatever
validate that, because there is a clear difference of opinion.
That's why we should document it.
Okay, definitely.
So good call on creating the issue then.
Omnibus and trying that manually, really.
All right. Yeah, good call on creating that issue. So thank you, Mathias. Camille, you're up with some feature flag updates.
Yeah, so like docs.gitlab.com, it's kind of right now blocked because the docs team tries to figure out how to actually like merge that into our architecture. So I'm kind of like waiting for Axie to help me out on that. The second one, I did not yet open an issue like MR to remove that. I'm just gonna remove that. Feature flags type ops, there is this discussion about the Runbook. So I plan to basically close this milestone. It's still on track. And this allow usage of the feature flags without definition. I'm actually have another MR open that is going through review. I need to add the chatops command improvements to actually close it. So I'm pretty close. I'm not sure if it's gonna be merged this week, but it should be pretty close. So my only like worry is like this docs table, because I don't know exactly if it's gonna materialize or not, to be honest. And I also created another issue for CSense scraping, basically, because like, okay, I created a bunch of the issues. Some of them are soft, some of them are open. For example, I open MR today to update milestone of all feature flags that I'm able to update. So there is like this MR is waiting for being merged because we have each of the feature flags gonna have like defined milestone. But from the statistical point of view, we need to push the data into Sisense. So like we could basically for, let's say, memory team dashboard on the Periscope, show a nice graph. Hey, your team has that amount of the feature flags, that some of them are still to this milestone and some of them are disabled. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out exactly what it takes to push that into Sisense. And there is like the data issue, GitLab data issue created for that particular purpose to push that there. So we could kind of enforce each team like with this extra metric that they could graph over time. And with the feature flags, there is also like ongoing discussion about the working group, about the feature flags policies and behaviors, but this is not reflected as the issue here. So that's it from me. But I see that there is another one created by me. I just copied labels, so we should remove the label, sorry.
This one?
For this one. It's from GitLab pages, it's one bug that I noticed, but like it should not have the group memory label because I'm not working on that. There's gonna be someone else working on that. So it's wrong label basically.
Is that related to HTTP caching?
It's not related to your work, Mathias, on image scaling at all. It's separate service.
Yeah, sure.
Another problem.
I was just thinking it might be good once I get back to the caching stuff. I actually wanted to, that's not urgent, but I wanted to spend some time actually writing some docs on how HTTP caching works because it's very confusing right now. So if there's anything else that might fit that piece of documentation, then could be useful to incorporate. That's why I asked.
Maybe there are like some good explanations on the internet because like it's pretty common problem.
No, it's not to do with how HTTP caching works, but like how it is implemented in GitLab is super messy. It's really hard to understand. It's not documented anywhere.
Like you mean ETEC caching, right?
Not just ETEC caching, in general conditional gap. You know, it could be ETECs or just based on time modified timestamps. We don't have to talk about it now, but cool. I can when I get to it, I can ping you.
Okay, and I didn't catch this one, the logging issue.
Yeah, so this fell out of the observability work. Like when we shipped that dashboard for image scaling, we tripped our AppDex threshold straight away because we had a whole class of errors that totally went unnoticed, and they're not like critical. Like we were quite strict as well, like in the scale implementation. So we're actually rejecting a bunch of requests currently that we think we probably don't have to reject.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what Alexei is working on. And so what we realized was it's way too hard to see like what's going on and like what these errors are. So we said we want to look into improving logs there. And it's actually quite messy in Workhorse in general because we have this multi-line logging approach and the tags are not consistent. So it's like always a bit of a patchwork to look at the logs in Kibana. So I'm trying to, I had a catch-up call with Andrew, and he's amazing. Like he has always such great insights on observability and how to run these things operationally like a little bit easier. So I'm just starting with that and then see where that goes.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any concerns about wrapping up their work this week so that we can context switch over to the 2 gig goals for next week?
I don't know what to do with this action cable stuff because it keeps coming up and I spend time on it occasionally, but it feels like it's just dragging on for like forever. So I might have to spend more time on it this week because we're kind of blocked there again from rolling this out.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of open question.
Yeah, well, I think there'll be bandwidth for other topics, but as long as you don't think it's too consuming, but we can talk about that later if we need to. All right, jump back. So for next week, so I put the topic up there. It looks like folks have added some lines in there. Camille, you want to verbalize your first comment here?
Yeah, so like my first question is really like, are we ready like to disconnect from anything else that can be disturbing and focus only on that item? I think like that for this to be successful, we should not spend any time except this topic basically. So the question is to everyone here, like how confident you are like on wrapping up and really focusing on this single focus.
Do we need to pass the image resizing before that to another team? Because I doubt we could do that this week.
Yeah, no way. This is not gonna happen.
It wouldn't happen probably. If
I mean,
you
we
want
can-
us to pass it entirely, I think we need 1 more week. This week to wrap everything, and probably next week we'll raise some question. If we even start like passing it on Monday, it would even take a couple of days of conversations.
But Camille, do you mean just being focused during that week, or do you mean wrapping everything up and then moving ahead with just this epic, everyone? So
can you, I'm kind of like thinking about that, like, can you stop working on everything else during that week? Like ignore any other mentions, ignore any other MRs, comments, issues that are not related to this focus during that week. Is it fine or not fine?
I think
yes. It's fine.
I mean, we probably have to put the red bullet on for much MR reviews.
Oh, yeah.
And I will have to communicate with the action cable working group because I'm not totally sure what the timeline is by now because it's stalled. So I don't want them to think they need to rely on me during that week, but I can catch up with them.
So I think like as long as we can like announce to other parties that like we are not available during that time, unless there is like some I don't know S1 P1 emergency and it kind of like evicts everything else, it could really help us. So on this focus.
Okay. So preparations.
So, like requirements, it's like my perception what we should do. Like you don't have to agree with my perception. I feel like you are fine like to have some other perception, but like my perception is like we are focusing on the memory and we want to solve like the real world problem, which is like GitLab running on premise, very likely on the omnibus. So I kind of wrote this perception of the requirements, keeping that in mind. I don't care how much CPUs we have. We can have 16 CPUs, but only 2 gigs of the memory if this help us to have faster iteration because of the compile time or whatever. I mean, like, I want to us to focus on this 2 gig like memory limit, probably starting even like with the higher limit to get like an overall sense. I want to us to have like the VMs that we can run that ahead of that another week that we would be testing. I mean, like it's completely acceptable to use development environment to trying different aspects. But I think in general, like I would consider this to be a success if we would be able to run GitLab in some form, maybe not complete. It doesn't have to be complete. It doesn't have to have like all functions, but like the most important ones on like 2 gigs at the end of the week. And like kind of run that with the omnibus. It may be not perfect, but have it somehow functioning to some extent. Of course, like if you would run GitLab CE, it's gonna be much easier because of the much smaller amount of the dependencies and everything. But we're gonna really, what really I'm looking at is like figuring out the major aspects of this installation where we can optimize, or like what components take the most, what we can what gems we can remove from the GitLab to be much more favorable in this 2 gig installation, or we can just say, maybe at the end of the wiki, we're gonna say like 2 gigs is like not doable, but 3 gigs is fine, and it works mostly. It can be also like our outcome. I'm kind of assuming that there is some way to run it on the 2 gigs. It's maybe very hacky. So I'm really looking to have as close as the production and as hacky as possible to get the goal running. It may be unrealistic to ship that in the end, but I'm looking at achieving the goal. I'm not looking at figuring out exactly how to ship that. We're gonna figure out that next, later, when we have like a bag of different ideas what we can change in GitLab.
Right. I have one question. If we wanna, because to make that easy as well, from past experience, I found it super hard to hack on Omnibus, whether that be local or even in GCP. I saw you had a preference for using GCP, so people spin up their own VMs. I'm up for that. We should probably make sure that probably before we go into that week, everyone on the team is familiar with how to do that. And also, I'm not totally sure how easy it is. Like last time I played around with this, I mean, I was able to fairly easily install a pre-baked image from GitLab registry, but these take over an hour to build. So if we want to iterate quickly and hack, I'm not totally sure what a good workflow is. I think we should kind of try to figure these things out before, so that we can be productive kind of on day one. So maybe we can spend some Friday during the office hours maybe, or in some other time slot to maybe figure out a good work loop, right? If we want to hack on Omnibus. Because I've also used the Omnibus builder in the past and I never was able to make it work properly. And I know other people had similar struggles, and I would hate if we would lose a day over this, basically.
Yes, so this is also the suggestion. I think that we should accommodate the whole Friday to configure ends in completely probably pairing way to try different approaches, try to configure that together, see where we are at. So like we could start with the issues on the Monday and try
I like that.
approaches. Because like I'm kind of like thinking that on this Friday, what we could spend on is like create the, let's say, README or FAQ of the steps for us to replicate what we are doing, and have these like as a single source of truth, and then like if anyone gets stuck at any point, it could go through this FAQ and like reprovision everything in using that. So I'm kind of assuming that like we'll just spend the Friday on having these VMs for each of us. We'll together try to install that, run that initially, get some initial sense, try to tinker and change different aspects of the Omnibus and GitLab, maybe live, maybe some other way, figure out a little of the like tool set that we may use to this like investigation. I'm kind of like Mathias. I'm kind of certain that like Omnibus will not make it quick to test all of the aspects, but I think like in the end, what I would like to see, like if we get something running locally in the development, we try to replicate it on the Omnibus to see exactly how this change behaves in the production environment, which is like something much closer to the production that we can ever get with the GCK, GDK, or whatever else. I think this is really like what I'm looking for, because like for me, the data that we get in the development running in the container or anything is not accurate in terms how our customers gonna be running that. Like,
I totally
even running Omnibus in the container, it's not gonna be accurate as how our customers are running, even though it's much closer. But like, I think that my primary focus is like solve the real world problem, not like the artificial problem that we are creating by adding another layer. Basically, that's primary goal.
No, I'm totally with you there. I just wanted to point out that I did try it in the past to move some of the testing, debugging, performance testing to Omnibus, and it was just not straightforward. So yeah, but as long as we will figure it out somehow on Friday to just have a good workflow that we can validate these things in Omnibus.
I mean, like I personally in the past managed to tinker with the running Omnibus installation in various ways, in like not rebuilding everything. So I have a few tricks on my sleeve, so
Sounds
if this
good.
is what it's worth.
Yeah, but from my experience with Geo, it's probably really worthwhile setting these things up ahead of time because it can be a bit tedious. There's also all sorts of automation around by now. I think Grant knows more about that than I do, but it's definitely something to do ahead of time.
There's like another aspect really that like we haven't thought, like how are we gonna measure and what metrics we're gonna be looking at to say that something is performant or is not performant. So I'm kind of like thinking maybe like we could use some of the GPT to have some, let's say, limited baseline on like what we are looking at. Maybe like for the 1K architecture, and like use that. Maybe when we start tinkering with this GitLab, not all of the features gonna be working. So maybe some of these tests gonna fail, but to have some like baseline measurement really of that. So I think we're gonna have pretty interesting Friday to figure out these aspects about like omnibus, VMs that we're gonna be using, tinkering with tooling, and also probably how we're gonna be performance testing really, or like how we're gonna be like trying to be analytical really. I guess this is my expectation.
Yeah, and the same goes for memory consumption, right? Because I don't think we have decided yet, do we want to look at the actual physical memory consumption that we see? Or are we looking at these kind of more vanity figures like RSS, which like a lot of users will look at, right? So because that can be tricky, right? Because if you in actual physical memory use, you might be lower than whatever the sum of the RSS reports are by all the different processes, right? If then a user goes in and says, oh, well, you claim you only need, like 2 gigs, but it's actually consuming 2.8 or something like this. I can see this causing a lot of confusion.
The idea is to run on 2 gig box, since we are like trying to solve when there is this marketing component in it.
Right.
So it should be running more or less normally in this 2 gig, whatever it's set by Google Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky because like you could have much higher memory limit with the swapping, but if you connect HDD type of the drive, the swapping gonna be terrible. So I guess like Mathias, my perspective on that to answer your question is like we look at the I think we will be looking at the raw number, like what is like the memory pressure. And like how many, because I kind of expected that on the 2 gigs, we're gonna have to configure some kind of swapping. It's like, it's unrealistic to not run without swap. But there is a number of the metrics, which is like, what was this metric? Memory validation or something like that shows you how often system has to reach the swap to get the data. So probably this could be our metric. How severe is the swapping on the 2 gig when we are running some kind of performance testing, or like how many requests we can run with the performance testing, like for the, let's say, 1K architecture that has, I don't know, 4 gigs. I'm throwing that out of the head, but I'm kind of really, I think it's less important how much memory we use in the end, but how performant is GitLab during that time? Can it actually like run this amount of the users on the 2 gigs? Because if we are swapping, but this is infrequently access swap, it's not really like that big of the deal, really. I mean, like it's still like we have over a 2 gig limit, but I think the 2 gig limit is really about like making GitLab installation usable on the 2 gig, but not achieving like 2 gig. Because like if you would set memory killer to 500 megs, we would be constantly swapping, but it would not be like using 2 gigs even, but it would be not usable at all, to be honest as well. So no, I think like the 2 gigs is like the limit of the size that you have. But whatever tricks you do to make GitLab be performant on these 2 gigs, it could be like with swapping, with the memory compression. It could be like with some system tuning or something like that about how the swappiness is behaving and how like this eviction policy is behaving. So
yeah, no, that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah. And honestly, that's all the users care about anyway, right? They probably don't care about the exact amount of.
So I guess like it's like the match. We're gonna probably have two metrics, like the raw memory usage and like the actual user visible performance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. We on to logistics. I think we talked about most of this. So we have initial set of issues. We have scoring criteria out there. So take a look at those issues prior to Friday or Monday, I suppose. Logistics, I asked the question about daily sync. Camille said yes, he feels like daily sync would be beneficial and picked a time. Does that time work for everyone? 10 or 1, sorry, 10 or 11
Is
in
it
the morning.
GMT or what? Or is it
that's
like
Camille's local
Central
time.
European?
So probably like the office hours of the Friday or something around that time.
So that's 9 a.m. GMT.
So like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. GMT, whatever is like suitable. I mean, like I usually did find useful to have like, let's say 1 hour before the kind of stand up in the morning to kind of wrap up my head around what did happen like last day.
Yeah.
So probably I would also look at having this, let's say 1 hour in the morning to kind of to prepare to the stand up and like rethink what did happen like last day.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Which one, earlier or later time?
Then I would probably vote as someone who starts later than you. Like in my time, it's 12 a.m., 9 a.m. GMT. I would vote 10 a.m. GMT is if you're not against it.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be better for me.
Okay.
10 is good.
Nicola, how about you? There is democracy.
Sorry.
I know that we choose already, but like, how about you?
Yeah, I know that, but like I was mute. Yeah, I agree with the time. 10 a.m. GMT is fine.
I'll set it up. You want me to just cancel the office hours for this week since you're going to be effectively meeting daily anyway? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll set it up and use my Zoom because I won't be awake at that time. So. All right. Looks like we got through everything. We talked about all of these topics earlier.
Yeah.
So any other topics covered today? Any other questions?
Can I ask a really naive question? Sorry about the memory
Yeah.
stuff. Is the goal to make GitLab itself run under 2 gig, or is the goal to make GitLab run on a box that has 2 gig?
On a box that has 2 gig.
Okay, so GitLab itself needs to run probably quite a bit lower, depending on the operating system.
So I would assume that we're gonna have VM that has 2 gig memory limit.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what we'll start with.
That has like 2 gig on the VM, and see exactly how it works.
Because yeah, it gets a little bit fuzzy when it comes to different operating systems and how much memory they'll need in general use. Maybe not even initially. Sometimes they might need more memory depending on what processes are running in the background. So I think it's still good. I think to draw a line in the sand, it's still good to aim for a 2 gig box. That makes sense because then you can have the physical requirement. But just to call it that, you might need to target GitLab lower to make it work as nice as possible. So you could be targeting 1.8 or 1.6, depending on how aggressive the OS is. Although I don't expect 1.6 would be needed. That's pretty low.
Yeah, and I mean and of course, like, you know, we'll see how it goes. Like, you know, but the other aspect to this is that you've probably seen by now the chart that Chinyu posted about the last 6 months or so. So the last 6 iterations or releases of memory growth that we've seen, it's going up and up and up, right? With every milestone release. I forgot by how much percent it goes up. But like, that's something to keep in mind as well, right? So if we were to able to squeeze it just under, and just onto this VM or box or whatever, it might not work with the next release because we keep growing the app as well. So that's something else to keep in mind. So yeah, it's really hard to just say this is like a long-term target anyway, right? Because it's constantly moving goalposts, I think.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
And all those choices and decisions and caveats, we should document them all so that all of our stakeholders know, like GitLab will run if you do all of these things, and it will only run if we stay stable and don't continue with the memory growth that we're seeing historically over time. All that needs to be documented, so it's not, okay, we can run on 2 gigs forever. And even if, ultimately we find we can't, what stopped us from getting to that goal? So there's going to be a lot of documentation, and decision log, I think, is going to be super important in this initiative as well.
Right.
So.
All right, I had a couple of questions regarding boards and the location of things, which is obviously very exciting. Is this a good time to ask?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am just trying to get an overview of where things are at, and we have some, as you're probably aware from Josh, some external constraints, when we need to do some videos and whatnot. So the purpose is not to say this is how we do it. The purpose at the moment for me is to understand where I can actually find things and understand what's going on. And so can I share my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Now we can maybe go through some of few things. So, can you see my screen? Yeah, okay. So I went through some of those bits here, and so what I've seen today in the call is that you have a sort of a board that lists all of the issues by milestone.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have one that lists things by priority, if you set the labels correctly. And so my first question is this one, for example, here, where you have issues sort of grouped by priority for memory, is that something that you use regularly?
I don't use it, to be honest.
I don't use it as well.
To be
Okay,
honest,
cool.
Fabian, the one that we really only use the milestone board.
You only use the one.
Yeah.
That's already
Yes.
very helpful, because then that allows me to know where I need to look, because I also tried to find things here in this one, and there's a kind of discrepancy between what is labeled in the workflow here and what is actually in the sort of milestone board.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that already helps a lot, because then I can go through the milestone sort of board. I'm not quite sure if I have that link.
I just added it in the doc. It's the second link there after roadmap.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get rid of the other links because we don't use them.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just asking. Okay, and so the way, yep.
I was going to say during the meeting, but I was at least going to say asynchronously. It looks like we're inconsistent on our workflow labels. I was just part of reviewing that MR for updating our product development workflow. So it's probably something we can get better at adding, was it workflow in dev, workflow in review on our issues, getting better at that.
By the way, should we add it only on the issue and it will propagate to the MR, or like how does it work? Do you know if I should update both MRs and the issues with the status?
It won't propagate. It's a manual task.
Okay. So
yeah, no, it's like you have to update the issue, and you have to do it manually.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the board, and so for 13.6, is this roughly stack ranked by priority, or is it essentially these are the things we're going to work on, people are assigned to them, and then every week you kind of go through this and provide an update, just as you did in this meeting?
They are not stack ranked. We have tried stack ranking in the past, but it kind of fluctuates. So today, what I did instead was just group it by effectively swim lanes. Our swim lane functionality is not quite there yet. And we don't always walk the board. Typically, we give like a high level overview and then kind of dive deep where we need to. But
Sounds good.
Usually like the week before, I like to go in and walk the board to make sure we didn't miss anything. And that's about where we are in the milestone right now.
Cool. Okay, that helps. And then the items here for 13.7, this is our ideas for what will be prioritized next milestone. And that's probably in need of updating roughly before we actually make the video.
Yes.
Okay, that helps already because that, at least for now, makes it a lot simpler for me. I can ignore these other boards. And I think just for in Geo, we use these workflow labels a little bit more consistently. I think it has certain advantages to know where issues are and when they are going to make it. One thing that we do, I can just show you, is like I personally, I really don't like these like gazillion of open issues and open and closed. It's super messy. So one thing that I've done with Geo is we have this, we hack the label system. We have a Geo active label that I apply to things, which is everything that actually people will work on, right? Rather than the entire backlog in open, which keeps the board pretty clean. So we can talk about, if this makes sense to change at some point or not. At the moment, I think for the next couple of weeks, while I acquaint myself with all of this, I'm just going to read all of those issues, right? And we're going to talk about what's next, and then we can go from there. But that helps. One other question is just because I've seen some of it, but I'm not quite sure where we are with this. Do you use epics to group work? Yeah. Because I'm a big fan of epics, and also I think similar to what Camille sort of proposed for next week is to like group things into an epic and then maybe focus on a few epics at a time, so that the focus of a group is, okay, this is the image scaling work that we're focusing on, which is in this epic, and then you close everything out from that, and it provides a bit more context. So that's good, because I think I can help with some of those things as well in the future.
I usually spend some time during the week to make sure that issues all have epics related to them. So
cool. I think those are the most important things. I need to spend a little bit more time reading. I think also for transparency, given I'm doing this for a database as well, right? I am happy with some flexibility as long as it works for the team, right? So if we use certain things or don't use certain things because you find them bothersome and not productive, then that's fine with me. I think my main ask is that we are moderately consistent, so if we don't use certain things, then we don't, and if we do use them, then we actually end up doing them, because otherwise it gets really confusing. Yeah, cool, that helps. I think I'll do the reading. I'm super excited for your 1 week research sprint, or whatever the correct terminology is. I think that's a great idea. I've done some sort of design sprints in the past where a team it was more structured, but met for a week to find a solution to a product problem. And these things tend to be highly productive if you actually shut yourself away from the rest of the world and only focus on this. So cool, thanks. Yeah, and I'll work with Craig and you to figure out this week what we're going to announce for 13.7. And I'll stand in front of the video camera for 10 minutes, or maybe like 5.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Feel free to ping us if there are any questions.
Yeah, no, I'll ping you in Slack, and if you need any direction from me, or you need somebody to talk to a customer or anything like that, then feel free to ping me. I'm happy to help. And if it's about release post shenanigans and merging things like that, you can also always ping me, and I'll be happy to get these things going.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for reviewing that. It's always interesting to have a new team member join and say, hey, all these links don't lead anywhere. Are we actually using these things? So
yeah.
Nice.
No, I have the same in Geo.
Yeah.
It's completely normal reality, and the number of boards have a very small overlap usually. So
awesome. All right, unless there's anything else, I'll let everybody get back to it. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Happy Monday.
See ya.
Happy Monday. See ya.